Hey, best friend. So let's be real for a second. Tell me the truth. Have you ever felt completely stuck? Like completely stuck. Like you're wading through mud, spinning your wheels, and no matter what you do, you cannot seem to move forward. Maybe you're stuck in a job that you hate. Maybe you're stuck in this cycle of burnout and exhaustion. Maybe you're stuck in a relationship that's draining you. Or maybe you feel stuck in your own head. I don't know if there's anything worse than stuck in your own head, overthinking everything and making zero progress. You know, I've been there too. Truly, I've been there too. But what if I told you that feeling stuck is not a life sentence, that this is not forever? What if I told you, friend, that getting unstuck is not about working harder, it's about working differently? So, friend, today, let's talk about why we get stuck, what's actually happening in our brains and bodies, and most importantly, how to break free. Plus, we're going to talk about your identity. I think that's really important. I talk about it a lot. The questions that you ask, and even the way that your nervous system is wired, and how all of this it plays a role in whether you stay stuck or move forward. And I know if you're listening to this, you want to move forward, right? So let's get unstuck. Let's make real progress. Go grab your coffee, snuggle up, get your tea. I have a friend that's not drinking coffee right now. It's all about the tea. So go get your tea, your matcha, your Diet Coke, whatever it is that you do, and let's hang out together. So, why do we get stuck? Why do we get stuck? A lot of times people think really that they get stuck because there's a lack of motivation. But really, it's kind of this brain, mind, nervous system issue. When we feel stuck, it often comes down to our brain processing challenges. Our brain, friend, is first wired for survival, not thrival, not thriving, not success. It's wired for survival. So let's just let that land for a second. It's not thinking about how can I live my best life. Our brain is thinking about how can I survive and get to the next day. Your brain often, friend, prioritizes safety over change, which is why stepping out of your comfort zone can feel so hard. Pause for a second. Have you ever wanted to do something that you knew that you should do and then you didn't do it because it just felt uncomfortable? You were stuck in that moment. I know that I have, where it's like, oh, I need to go talk to that person, and internally, identity. So I'm going to talk about that, but it's like, oh, I'm an introvert. I don't, I'll pass or whatever. No, that's getting out of uncomfortable. So let's talk about these three P's, these ways that we think, these thought patterns that actually keep us trapped. So the first one is personal. I take it personal. This is the story that you tell yourself. You tell yourself that the reason that something is happening is because it's about you. You make an identity out of it. I'm stuck because I'm not good enough. I will always fail at this. Something is wrong with me. You make it personal. They don't ask me to hang out because I'm weird. They don't ask me to hang out because I don't fit in their little clique. They don't ask me for whatever. No, maybe they actually just don't ask you because you don't even say hi to them because you have all of this weird stuff going on in your mind about how you're not good enough. So you're not even putting yourself in a place for somebody to ask you to go have coffee with them because you're inadvertently keeping yourself stuck. When we think about the brain and when we personalize failure, when we personalize and say that something is wrong about us, what it does, this is so cool, it activates our amygdala, which is the fear center of our brain. I think anxiety probably lives there also. and it gets activated and it triggers this stress response, this fight, flight, or freeze response. And this makes it harder to take action because our brain perceives failure as a threat. Our brain perceives, hey, if I go say hi to those girls that I would like to go have coffee with, what if they reject me? That what if question. What if they do that? And then that creates anxiety internally, and we don't do it. We don't do it. So the first thing is we make it personal. That's the first P. The second P is that we make it pervasive. We make it bigger than it really is. Have you ever convinced yourself that the problem is everywhere? Like if you're struggling in your career, your whole life is a mess. If you and your boyfriend or your husband got in a fight, your relationship is doomed. If you're failing at something, you're failing everywhere. If and this is the brain starts to look at things through a lens of this filter of it's pervasive when most of the time it's actually not. It most of the time it's really not. I want you to think about that. Where when you start looking, and the brain does this, when you start looking for what's wrong, it will find it. It will find it. Yeah. So the brain does this thing called negativity bias. And when what this means really is that we naturally focus on what's wrong instead of what's right. And when we do this, the prefrontal cortex, which is our decision making center, starts losing its grip when we're overwhelmed, making it harder to problem solve because that negativity bias puts us in a no surprise, negative headspace. Well, that makes sense, right? So, first, we see this problem as personal. Something is wrong with me. And then we see the problem as pervasive. It is everywhere. It is everywhere. This everything is wrong in my life. I'm not good enough everywhere. So the brain starts looking for this and it also starts creating it, which is a wild thing to think about. It's almost like you put on these glasses that are like I suck glasses, and the lens is colored whatever color. Definitely not pink, like green maybe. Sorry if you like green, but not like that that deep green. I have a couch that's that color, but bright green. Anyways, I don't know why I got down the green path. Anyways, but it's like you put on these glasses that have shade of green and all you see is negative everywhere. Everything is colored through this lens. It's pervasive. Really? Well, maybe your boss just gave you some feedback that you need to grow. You could be better in this area, but it's not that you're failing everywhere. So personal, pervasive, and then permanent. So permanent is this next thought pattern, feeling like it will never, ever change. We tell ourselves this problem will last forever. I will always be this way. I will never figure it out. It's always been this way and it always will be. No one will ever like me. I will never lose the weight. I will always be this way. Can you see how this is super disempowering? It also puts us in a victim mindset. We don't even mean for it to, but it also puts us in this victim mindset where we are victims to our life. We are victims to what's coming at us rather than, oh, you know what? Like bad things are happening or something bad happened here, but that doesn't mean that it's forever. I think about my own fertility journey. It took me 9 years to be able to conceive and carry a baby to term. And there were moments when I felt like this situation was freaking permanent and definitely that it was personal, that something was fundamentally wrong with me. So permanent, personal. Uh, and I don't know that I would say for sure that that was pervasive, but it did feel sometimes like if this didn't happen, my whole life would be not what I wanted it to be. I don't know that I could ever say it was going to be destroyed, but that it wouldn't have the color that it was supposed to have. So in some capacity, I did believe, I guess that it was, I'm talking myself through this, that it was pervasive. So as you start to add more P's, the bigger the problem becomes, the more that you feel stuck. Are you getting that, friend? Permanent, pervasive, personal. And when we think about that something is permanent, there we go. When we think about something that is permanent, what our brain is also doing is strengthening whatever we repeat. I did a whole podcast on rehearsal. It is strengthening whatever we repeat, which is neuroplasticity. And we can either have neuroplasticity work for us or work against us. Your neurons literally wire together what you reinforce as a belief. They wire it together. So if you tell yourself, I will always be stuck, I suck, your brain will continue to work hard to make sure that that belief is true. It thinks that it's helping you. It's not trying to sabotage you. It thinks that it's helping you. That really, follow me. If you believe that the girls in my earlier example, the girls don't invite you to coffee because something's wrong with you. And really, then it means that you have no friends and this will never change. As odd as it may be, the brain actually thinks that it's protecting you because what would happen, this the belief that you have, what would happen is if you approach the girls and you actually said hi and tried to have a conversation or get to know them or ask them to coffee, what would happen is that these girls would say, no, you're a loser and we don't like you and we would never want to hang out with you. So the brain, what it thinks that it's doing is helping you by avoiding the pain of that rejection, and it's almost keeping those beliefs in place of permanent, pervasive, personal. We gotta pull those apart. I'm going to tell you how to do that in a minute. So when we think about again, all of this, personal is really linked to identity, that our identity can keep us stuck. If we say, I'm not a disciplined person, if we say, I've always been bad at this, if we say, I always stress eat, if we say, I never have enough time. And by the way, that was one of the things that I would tell myself, I never have enough time. Surprisingly, I never did. Is it really all that surprising though? Your brain will always try to prove your identity is right. If you believe that you're someone that's stuck, your RAS, your reticular activating system, which you've heard me talk about, acts like this mental filter. And it will only, hear me, only look for evidence to confirm that belief. I don't know about you, but I would really like for my RAS to look for all the ways that I'm awesome rather than all the ways that I'm not. Right? Yeah. These beliefs are powerful. These things that we rehearse are powerful because we're training our brain to look for it. Wouldn't it be better if it looked for other things? You know what I'm saying? So let's talk about how to get unstuck. You want to know how to get unstuck, right? You don't want to be trying to walk through quicksand in your own mental gymnastics. That doesn't even make sense, but it does to my brain. Somebody out there was like, that checks out. That makes sense to me. Yeah. Quicksand and mental gymnastics somehow go together. So, in order to get unstuck, you need to shift your identity. Friend, you have to. You have to reframe who you are. And by the way, that's the power of a bestie, because sometimes we need our besties to help us reframe who we are. That you're like, I am stuck. I cannot get out of this thought. I keep saying, I can't figure it out. I am not able to do this. I'm always this way. That we actually need friends, a good counselor, a good coach. That'll help you too. Of someone to say, well, instead of saying I'm stuck, that you say I'm figuring this out. I'm someone that takes action. I'm learning to move forward even when it's messy. I'm learning to do that. That we shift our identity as someone from someone who is stuck to someone who's taking action. Every day I'm taking a step. I didn't say how big that step was. I didn't say that you're climbing Mount Everest in a day. I said, I'm taking a step. What's one step I can take? You're shifting your identity. I'm figuring this out. I have the internal resources. That's one of my favorites because the truth is that we have the internal resources. Sometimes we just have to tap into them. So you need to shift your identity. You need to reframe who you are and solicit help. If you don't have it, solicit help. You also need to change the questions that you're asking. My podcast last week talked about asking better questions. So when you ask questions, bad questions keep you stuck, good questions move you forward. Let's think about this. I want you to ask yourself, whatever it is, I want you to think about a problem that you have right now. And then ask yourself, why can't I get this right? Guess what? Your brain starts to give you answers, doesn't it? Why can't I get this right? That keeps you trapped, doesn't it? It keeps you trapped. What if you were to say, what's one thing I can do right now? Well, that creates movement. The brain will answer that question in the same way the brain will answer, why can't I get this right? Don't you want to ask your brain good questions? Don't you want to actually help train your brain to get you what you need and want? I know I do. Sometimes we need to get out of our head and into our body. We need to take a walk. We need to stretch. We need to change our physical. We need to change our physical place. Sometimes if you're sitting, you need to stand up. I am a firm believer in power poses. And by the way, that's because there's research behind them. I didn't pull it. I didn't even mean to, I didn't even plan to talk about this. So I didn't pull the research for it. But when you stand in a power pose, I think it's some amount of seconds, somewhere between 30 and 45, something like that. When you stand in a power pose, it changes your internal wiring. You begin to feel, guess what? I can do anything. Oh, I can do that. I can solve that problem. The bigger that you get, the stronger your power pose is. You know, your shoulders are back, your head is high, you're looking up rather than looking down. Like my power pose involves some sort of like, it's almost like this snooty, like that's like the angle of my chin is like sort of up, and it's like this sort of like snooty, like I'm better than you. That's not a thought that I have, but it like, I don't know how to explain it other than that. I'm like, I'm looking down on you, but it's like I'm looking down on my problems, that I put myself physiologically in this place where I am different. And by the way, when you change your physiological body, you actually change everything else, because your thoughts and your behaviors follow your physiology. Isn't that amazing? I mean, think about how you sit when you're feeling depressed, or when you're feeling anxious, or just overall low or bored, whatever it is. A lot of times your head's down, your shoulders are slumped. You're in this position, this body position that is very disempowering. But when you change your physiology, like sometimes it's like, I just need to do a couple push-ups or squats, or I need to go walk to my back door, let my dog out and come back and walk with my shoulders back and my head up. It changes your physiology, which changes your thought and your behavior patterns. This is so simple, and yet we rarely access it. The next is you need to take imperfect action. Stop waiting to feel motivated and just take one step. Research actually shows that motivation comes to the middle or end of something rather than the beginning. Most people are like, I'll do that when I feel motivated. Guess what? It's probably going to be a while. probably going to be a while. You're probably not going to feel especially if it's something that you need to do that you're not in a rhythm or habit of doing. Motivation comes middle to the end where you're like, I'm glad I did that. I think about going to the gym. If you're out of the rhythm, I know there's some people that religiously go to the gym. That is a huge part of their life. They don't need to be motivated to go because it is just such a rhythm. And they want to often because they've stayed in this pattern for so long. But if you're out of the pattern of something, like, I don't know, journaling, reading the Bible, whatever it is, if you're out of the pattern of that, sometimes it's like, I don't feel motivated. You just gotta do it. And know that towards the middle where you're like, glad I'm doing this, or the end where you're like, oh, solid. I'm glad I did that. That's motivation to do it again. And action creates momentum. It's Newton's law. A body in motion stays in motion. The hardest part is getting yourself in motion. You just have to do it. Just do it. Momentum creates confidence. Confidence keeps you moving because I bet that if I'm just using the gym as an example, you go to the gym, you leave, you're glad you did it. You're like, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you, girlfriend. You did it. You went to the gym. My girl, way to go. And that proud feeling creates confidence. That proud feeling keeps you moving. We actually have to tap into that. Pretty amazing, right? That we have these resources internally that we can really get ourselves unstuck. So you have to ask good questions. I'm coming back to that. You have to ask good questions and start peeling apart these layers. That the first with I'm coming back to the 3 Ps, that we remove the identity. That my identity is a person that takes action. My identity is a person that solves problems. That my identity is a great friend. That it's not personal. We shift our identity. Then we go, all right, it's not pervasive. How do I know that it's not pervasive? Where am I killing it in yes, my boss gave me really bad feedback. I need to grow. Where am I killing it in my life? I think about students. I have students and sometimes they're like, "Man, this is the worst grade that I've ever got." But in the grand scheme of things, you've gotten a lot of other good grades. So let's focus on, all right, integrate this feedback and you'll keep getting good grades, right? So we expand the pervasive and it's not permanent. This isn't forever. It's not forever. And so, in order to pull apart those 3 Ps, we have to ask good questions. Again, I'm coming back to, well, if I think it's personal, well, what are other reasons that this could be happening? What are other reasons that these girls have not asked me to coffee? What are other reasons? So I'm giving my brain something else to think. All right, I feel really alone in my life. But do I actually have people I'm not leaning into? Where am I not alone? And then permanent. Is this really is it really the rest of my life or is it just right now? It's just right now. All right. So if it's just right now, then I can change it. What do I need to do to make sure this isn't permanent? What action can I take to create movement? Must ask good questions. Pull apart the 3 Ps. Get into your body and just take action. So, in typical Dr. Britt fashion, I'm going to ask you some questions. And I want you to really think through these. Pause if you need to, pull out a journal. Where in my life, this is your first question, where in my life do I feel the most stuck? Second, am I seeing this problem as personal, pervasive, and or permanent? 3, what small action can I take today to shift momentum? 4, what's the story I've been telling myself, thinking about identity, and how can I rewrite it? And 5, what would the future unstuck version of me do right now? What would the future unstuck version of me do right now? Now, I want you to understand how powerful of a question number 5 is, because what you're doing to your mind is you are suggesting, you are presupposing that in the future you are not stuck. So, the future you that's not stuck, what would they do right now? That is an expansive, opening question to your mind. So powerful. Friend, you are not stuck permanently. You are becoming the best version of you. Your brain, friend, is constantly rewiring, meaning it can change, it can adapt, it can move into the story that you're telling yourself. Isn't that powerful? Friend, let's move forward. It's okay if it's messy. It's okay if it feels like 3 steps forward, 1 step back. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs 1 step at a time to create the ripple effect of change. I want you to think about it. Let's say, I use physical body because it's easy. Let's say that you're like, I'm going to lose 40 pounds this year. Well, let's say if at the end of the year, you lost 20 instead of 40. While you didn't achieve your overall goal, you are 20 pounds lighter, aren't you? What if your goal was to lose 40 pounds of psychological, mental, emotional weight? If you lost 20 this year, wouldn't that be better? Better than 40? 20 to go. That's still a step in the right direction. Those ripple effects create change. The more that you take the steps, the easier it becomes. Friend, if you love this episode, share it with a bestie. Come find me on Instagram. And by the way, if you're like, I don't have besties and I need them, come join the besties community and keep this conversation going. We talk about the podcast in the besties community. Come join us. There's a power of like-minded people moving the same direction. So if you feel stuck, this isn't forever. It's not about who you are, and it's not in every area of your life. You have got this, and I am here to do it with you. Bessie, until next time.